that we saw from the leader of the opposition, the member from Carleton last week, talking about safe places that will now exclude trans women. We need to be vigilant in all areas of society to protect women. And we know that the consequences of intimate partner violence are also very costly. The Department of Justice, for example, estimated the cost of intimate partner violence to be roughly $7.4 billion. It not only costs dignity, it not only costs safety, it also costs us financially by turning a blind eye to the crisis of intimate partner violence. Now, one of the biggest concerns that I had for this bill was the impact that it might have on Indigenous peoples. Now, we know that the Liberal government throwing out the amendments to C-318, as we heard this morning, are certainly not committed. But in the last Parliament, we did pass Bill C-15, which includes Article 5, which states that all legislation that the Government of Canada must, in consultation and cooperation with Indigenous peoples, take all measures necessary to ensure that the laws of Canada are consistent with the Declaration. Like today, for example, they could have taken all the measures necessary to pass Bill C-13 and provide royal consent with the amendments to make sure that it was consistent with United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They didn't. But we know the Liberal government is not a champion of Indigenous rights in this country as they continue to willfully violate our rights. So when we were amending this bill, one of the concerns that I had was related to Indigenous peoples due to the ongoing legacy of colonial state policies and laws. Indigenous people, as a result, are overrepresented in Canada's criminal justice system. We must make sure that our criminal justice system is consistent with Bill C-15 and which affirms that all legislation going forward, I know that this is a Senate bill, but just for a matter of principle, is consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. In 2018, Indigenous adults made up 30% of admissions to provincial and territorial custody and 29% of the admissions to federal custody, while representing 4% of the population. Indigenous women, in fact, made up an even greater share of those admitted to custody at 42%. This type of amendment, I moved an amendment in committee to add an amendment for cases involving Indigenous people to enable judges to consider alternative, culturally appropriate Indigenous support services rather than imprisonment. This type of amendment is not only morally necessary, it is legally necessary as well. Again, Bill C-15 requires all Canadian legislation on the government side to be consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which includes requirements that states prevent discrimination against Indigenous people and respect the integrity of Indigenous cultures and traditions. The Gladue principles in Canadian law also compel judges to recognize the unique experience of Indigenous peoples, including racism, loss of language, removal from land, residential schools, and foster care. And given these considerations, judges must consider alternatives to prisons while sentencing, and such as, for example, an alternative restorative justice. I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to congratulate Senator Boissonnault. I'm looking forward to seeing this bill move quickly through the House. And I'd also like to thank my committee for the hard discussions we had getting this bill through committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Continuing debate, the honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to address the House today on Bill S-205, a bill that comes from a Conservative senator and a Conservative member of Parliament, a Conservative initiative aimed at combating domestic violence. And before I speak specifically about this bill, I do want to pay particular tribute to Senator Boisvenu, who is responsible for putting this bill forward. Senator Boisvenu is someone who in his family has seen the impacts of this kind of violence and has turned personal tragedy into public advocacy, standing up for victims of crime, and devoted his energies in the Senate and outside of the Senate to standing for justice and for the inclusion of victims' voices in various processes. So I want to take this opportunity to recognize his incredible work on this bill, but on so many other different areas. He's now retiring, and I think all members from all sides in the other place and in this place would pay tribute to him, his commitment to public service, and his work. That Bill S-205 is one of many proposals that he's put forward for combating domestic violence and other forms of violence, as well as standing up for victims. So Bill S-205 seeks to deal with orders that go against perpetrators of domestic violence that a judge would issue in order to protect victims and control their activities. In particular, it creates a mechanism where a judge can mandate that a perpetrator would wear an electronic monitoring device, and also that victims would be consulted in the process of judges making decisions about the kinds of orders that apply to perpetrators. These initiatives make sense. They are common sense. They would give victims of domestic violence a greater sense of security, and I believe would reduce subsequent violence and would save lives. Unfortunately, what we have seen in the process of this bill making its way through Parliament is that members of the Liberal government supported amendments at committee that weaken the bill. So here we are in the House at report stage, which is when this bill comes out of committee, and Conservatives are working to add back in some of those critical sections that were removed at committee. There's a lot of discussion in this place about combating domestic violence, but when the rubber hits the road, we have Liberals voting against critical measures that would actually protect victims of crime. Victims of crime are not primarily concerned about words of solidarity from politicians. There are a lot of politicians who say, we've had enough, enough is enough, this must stop. But the rubber hits the road with the concrete legislative initiatives that we put forward that punish perpetrators of this horrible crime, and that create kinds of mechanisms such as electronic monitoring that will allow victims of these crimes to feel safer. So it is disappointing that while having words to say about the problem of domestic violence, Liberal members have not actually supported the constructive initiatives that Conservatives in the other place and in this place have put forward. Mr. Speaker, as well, I wanted to mention an issue that I've been working on advocating for, and that is more bystander intervention training. I think one of the ways that we can combat crime, combat domestic violence, other forms of violence, is empower bystanders, empower people that may be outside of a situation, see things that are going on, to know how to respond, how to intervene, what kind of tools are available to them. I've been to a number of bystander training events, including in my own community, and I think these are very powerful tools for combating this kind of violence. We focus a lot, as we should, on punishing the perpetrator, protecting the victim, but I think we can also look at other people, bystanders, potential bystanders, in terms of how to engage them. And I have put forward a motion in this House, Motion 57, that deals with promoting more bystander intervention, awareness, and training. So I think that's another step that we should be talking more about in terms of combating domestic violence. Fundamentally, this is a phenomenal bill, a great bill, and I want to again recognize the excellent work of Senator Boisvenu throughout his life and career, standing for and with victims of crime. It's unfortunate to see efforts by Liberals and others to water down these kinds of initiatives. Words of solidarity are not enough. We need action. We need policy to punish perpetrators and protect victims. Those concrete initiatives are what's going to really make a difference to vulnerable people in our society. So I hope that the House will support conservative efforts to reverse the watering down amendments at committee and to strengthen this bill again so that we can do the work that everybody talks about, that is protect victims of domestic violence. Thank you very much.
When we return to the item, the honourable member will have 4 minutes remaining in his speech. The time provided for the consideration of private members' business has now expired, and the order is dropped to the bottom of the order of precedence on the order paper. Orders of the day.
Orders of the day, ordre du jour, consideration of government business motion number 35 on extension of sitting hours and conduct of extended proceedings.
Mr.
McKinnon, Gatineau, seconded by Madame Joly, moves that notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House for the duration of the session A1, a Minister of the Crown may I dispense?
Merci.
Thank you.
Continue.
May, with the agreement of the House Leader of another recognized party, at any time during a sitting but no later than 6:30 p.m., request that the ordinary hour of daily adjournment for a subsequent sitting be 12 a.m.
Day when a debate pursuant to Standing Order 52 or 53.1 is to take place, that such a request shall be deemed adopted. 2. A Minister of the Crown may request at any time during a sitting that a decision to extend a subsequent sitting made pursuant to subparagraph AI be rescinded and such request shall be deemed adopted. B. On a sitting day extended pursuant to subparagraph A, subparagraph I, proceedings on a opposition motion pursuant to Standing Order 81-16 shall conclude no later than 5 p.m. Tuesday to Thursday, 6:30 p.m. on a Monday or 1:30 p.m. on a Friday on allotted day for the business of supply, except pursuant to Standing Order 81-18C.
2. After 6:30 p.m., the Speaker shall not receive any quorum calls or dilatory motions, and shall only accept a request for unanimous consent after receiving a notice from the House leaders or whips of all recognized parties stating that they are in agreement with such a request. 3.
To proceed to the orders of the day and to adjourn the debate, or the House shall be moved after 6:30 p.m. by a Minister of the Crown, including a point of order, and such motions be deemed adopted. IV, la période prévue pour les heures d'aménagement.
The time provided for government orders shall not be extended pursuant to Standing Orders 33.2, 45.9, or 67.12. C.
C, I'm trying to read. I don't know. It's just like C, during consideration of the estimates on the allotted day of each supply period pursuant to Standing Orders 81-17 and 81-18. I, when the Speaker interrupts the proceedings for the purpose of putting forthwith all questions necessary to dispose of all the estimates, all remaining motions to concur in the votes for which a notice of opposition was filed shall be deemed to have been moved and seconded, the questions be deemed put, and recorded divisions deemed requested.
2. When a supply bill is considered in a committee of the whole, if a recorded division is requested to any bill elements, may I dispense?
Thank you so much. I only had 3 pages left. I mean, I really felt I should have got to the last page on this one. Simple as that. Débat.
The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today, of course, to discuss a motion